I told him he'd regret it. I said it as if the future were a contract I'd already reviewed and highlighted, as if life obeyed the bright lines in my planner. It was the night before Christmas Eve, the tree lights on a timer, the apartment smelling like cinnamon and bleach because I'd cleaned while angry. Daniel stood by the window rolling the edges of the curtain between his fingers, and I stood in front of the bookshelf I'd curated for the photos we'd take when he finally did it. Minimalist vases, 2 travel books spine out, the little ceramic letters that spelled us. I'd created a stage and then blamed the actor when he didn't come out on cue. By New Year's, I said, I'm done negotiating with uncertainty. Either we're engaged, or I'm done. He blinked once. I don't want to propose because I'm on a deadline, he said, the words careful, not cold. I want to propose because I'm ready to be a husband. You've been getting ready for 3 years, I shot back, the kind of sarcastic I later wish I could pull out of my own throat. You can repair a boiler with 1 YouTube video, Daniel, but you can't figure out what you want? He didn't rise to it. He never did, not at first. He's an engineer, he likes to lay things out on the table, make a plan, tighten bolts. You know the timeline, he said. I told you my student loan will be under 10 grand by March. I told you I'm trying to get mom's roof fixed before the spring storms. I told you I want to have 6 months of expenses and savings before I put money into a ring. That isn't commitment phobia. That's me trying to be responsible. And I told you my timeline, I said, which sounded rational enough to me then. I'm 31. I want kids before 36. I don't want to waste another year on someone who doesn't know. I could feel my voice getting higher, like thin glass. Everyone around me is moving forward. It's humiliating. What's humiliating? He asked quietly. That I won't propose on your schedule, or that your friends are posting photos. He didn't say it with meanness. He said it like a man asking a good question, which somehow infuriated me more. We went around like that for an hour. Money, moms, timing, Instagram. Until I pulled out the sentence I can't ever put back, if you don't do it by New Year's, you'll regret it. I am the best you'll ever do. I don't remember his face after that line. My memory blur cuts to the blue of the TV screen when the screensaver kicked on and the sound the radiator made like a creature settling in. I expected him to fold me into his chest and say, you're right. I'm scared, but I'll push through it. You're my forever. He didn't touch me. He nodded once and said, I hear you, in the voice he uses when he knows better than to argue with a storm. He didn't propose on Christmas. Or on the 27th at my parents' house when my uncle told the story of how he proposed to my aunt after 3 months in 1988 like the calendar is the same now. Or on New Year's Eve, even though we went to dinner at a place with candles short enough to show up in photos and I wore the green dress he loves and my nails were neutrals with a glaze named champagne crystals. At midnight, he kissed my forehead first and then my mouth, which felt like a plan he'd rehearsed. I woke up on January 1st and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was nothing sparkly in the jewelry dish but the earrings I always forget to take out. On January 2nd, I told him to get out. It wasn't dramatic. I'd practiced being calm, the way you practice a resignation speech you hope impresses the boss you're quitting on. I'm not going to drag you, I said. You're a good man. You're just not my man. I put his things into boxes with the tenderness of an archivist. His college mug, the cycling helmet he kept on the hook by the door, the raincoat I hate because it makes him look like a lemon. I kept my voice even while he looked at me like a man watching his house flood. Can we talk in a few days? He asked. Not to change your mind. Just to breathe before we decide this is permanent. You've had 3 years to breathe, I said. You're the one who wanted more time. I handed him the box. I didn't cry in front of him because I've always believed control is dignity. He kissed my forehead at the door like a habit his body refused to break. He said, I love you, and my mouth said, you'll regret this, while my heart punched me for being stupid. What I didn't know then, what I would learn too late, was that he already had a ring. Not the ring, not the final version, but the bones of a ring. The oval diamond from his grandmother's brooch he'd taken to a jeweler in November for a reset, the sketch design in his jacket pocket he meant to tweak, a monogram for inside the band that he'd scribbled on an index card. I didn't know because I wasn't curious about his plan, I was only interested in mine. He sent me a Google Doc on January 3rd titled Apartment Logistics. It was simple, respectful. We had 3 months left on the lease, jointly liable. He offered to keep paying his half while he found someone to take over his portion. He listed what he'd like to take: espresso machine, his mom's gift, toolbox, what I could keep, couch, rug, the bookshelf, stage for the proposal photos I never got. I signed where necessary like a professional. I told my friends I was brave. I posted a soft-hued quote on stories about calling in the future you deserve. I muted the friends who were getting engaged in Q1. I also cried into the sleeve of the sweater I'd bought for Christmas morning, the one I thought I'd be wearing in photos with a ring that glittered every time I reached for coffee. The thing about a clean breakup is that it exposes how dirty your motives were. I told everyone the truth the way I wanted it heard. I left because he wasted my time. The other truth, the one my therapist would pry out of me in March, was that I gave him an ultimatum because I was terrified he might propose later anyway and then I'd have to say yes from a place that wasn't pure. I wanted to control the terms of my own consent. Instead, I controlled myself out of the life I wanted with a man who had been building toward it in a language I didn't bother to learn. If you're waiting for the legal complications or the juicy HR drama, there wasn't any. We were 2 adults with a lease. The property manager required both signatures to remove a tenant. He lined up a new roommate through his friend group who passed the background check and income verification in 10 minutes because this is the city and apparently decent. Solvent people are lining up to split rent with a stranger. There was no ring to give back because there was never a ring on my hand. He didn't Venmo request me for the December electricity. He titled the Google Doc tabs utilities, furniture, deposit, and spare keys, and he wrote bullet points like a person you'd be lucky to marry if you hadn't insisted on doing it under fluorescent lights and a stopwatch. In late January, he came to get his last box with his brother. I handed him a small envelope labeled "For you." Inside was the spare key, the parking garage fob, and a note that said only, "I hope you get everything you want." It was the kind of generous sentence you write when you're still sure you're the one with the moral high ground. I did not date. Not then. I made mood boards for a life that would admire my standards. I went to yoga and pretended the burning in my shoulders was enlightenment. I took a weekend trip with my friend Claire to Palm Springs and had her take a photo of me in a sundress with my left hand on a citrus tree, just to see what it looked like. It looked like a woman standing in front of a tree. I didn't expect to see him again so soon. In February, I ran into him at the coffee shop near the park, the one with the tiny pastries that cost more than a sandwich. He was standing with a woman I didn't know, laughing at something the barista said about dog treats. He saw me and did the small nod of a person who remembers how you like your coffee but has refiled you as a courtesy. I approached because I am brave when I shouldn't be. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he said. "This is Ava," he added. Soft smile, simple introduction. She had the kind of face that gets called kind before it gets called pretty, which is to say she looked like a person who reads instructions before building furniture. I went home and shook for an hour like I'd narrowly avoided a crash. "What did you think would happen?" my therapist asked, when I told her through tears. "That he'd stay single until you were ready to miss him?" "Yes," I said, so fast I surprised us both. I thought. Okay, I thought he'd be sad. For longer. I thought he'd call me and say, "I'm ready now." And then I would say yes without the sick feeling that I forced him. She nodded like we'd landed on a core, then said, "He didn't want to propose to pass your exam. He wanted to propose when he felt solid. You set a deadline. He respected it. He left. He moved on," I said, stubborn, childish. "He moved forward," she corrected. "There's a difference." Spring came and my friends got engaged like popcorn. I went to 3 showers, for bachelorettes, and a 5th event that was called an engagement picnic because apparently we're inventing new rituals to fit our cameras. At every one, someone asked me how Daniel was and I said, "He's good," like I had a link to his calendar. I learned to leave early before the toasts. I learned to smile with my sunglasses on. I learned that jealousy feels like heartburn that never quite goes away. In May, Claire sent me a screenshot in the middle of a meeting, Daniel at a fundraiser for his mom's church roof, Ava standing next to him holding the check they'd raised, both of them beaming. The caption, "So proud of our community." I wanted to throw my laptop at the wall. I also wanted to donate. I did neither. I went to the bathroom and cried into my sleeve and then wiped my face with rough paper towels and told my face to behave. I could give you excuses for my ultimatum. Many of them are reasonable. I wanted what my friends had. I wanted to plan. I wanted to stop wondering if I was building a life with a man who might pivot. But the ugliest part is that I wanted a better story than the one we had. We were normal. We went to the grocery store and remembered each other's yogurt brands. We fixed the cabinet hinge with 2 YouTube videos and a borrowed drill. We paid the Comcast bill on time. We weren't a grand gesture. I didn't know how to tell that story to myself in a way that made me feel like the heroine. So I tried to manufacture a crescendo. Then in August, my phone pinged with a notification I wasn't prepared for. One of his cousin's public posts, a photo on a mountain at golden hour. Daniel on one knee. Ava with her hands over her mouth and the world going blurry in that way it does when people are about to get what they wanted. The caption, she said yes. I felt my heart drop, like literally dropping, like something in a cartoon. I made a sound that wasn't a sob or a laugh but a pressed-together version of both. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. I zoomed in. The ring was oval, simple, thin gold band, a stone that looked like it had history. He'd used his grandmother's diamond. I closed the app. I opened it again. I closed it. I threw my phone on the couch like it was hot. I picked it up 5 seconds later. I texted Claire, he's engaged. She wrote back, I'm coming over. She did. She brought cookies like I was 6. I told her not to call him names and she didn't. She just sat on the floor while I walked circles around my own living room and said every sentence I needed to say to be done with the version of me who thought I could scare someone into loving me faster. Do you think he proposed to prove I was wrong? I asked at one point, petty, small. No, she said. I think he proposed when he was ready. You gave him a deadline. You left. He moved on. And then he did the thing he always said he would do when the numbers and his heart lined up. But it didn't take him long, I muttered. He didn't owe you a sabbatical from joy, she replied, not harshly. I didn't drink that night. I wanted to understand the grief without fuzzing it out. It was a precise grief, the life I almost had with a man I actually loved, replaced by a life he will have with someone who didn't need to script his proposal to believe in it. I can live with this clean pain better than the messy rage I felt in January. Rage makes you do silly things, like message his sister, which, yes, I did once in March, a paragraph about timelines and fairness that she never responded to but probably screenshotted. Pain makes you quiet enough to see your part in your own ruin. 2 weeks after the engagement post, a small box arrived at my door with no return name, just his street written in his neat block letters. Inside, my copy of a book he'd borrowed, a t-shirt I used to sleep in that had gotten lost in the laundry, and a note on plain paper. Found these while packing, it read. Thought you might want them. And under that, another line that knocked me back, there's a card for you in the envelope if you want to read it. No pressure. Under the tissue paper was a sealed envelope with my name, written in ink I recognized from grocery lists. The card inside was dated December 12th. 2 weeks before my ultimatum. The front said, for my favorite person with a tiny bike stamped next to the words. Inside, in his handwriting, a draft. Leah. If you're reading this, I asked you a small question with a giant answer. I thought I would be calm, but I shook in the jewelry store picking up your ring because you are still the best thing I ever got brave for. I wanted to ask you this on the bridge where we nearly dropped our phones last spring, the day we decided we were a we. You make me want the kind of life I used to think was for other people, walk the dog, fix the sink, argue about paint colors, cry at the movies, hold you at 2 a.m. When your brain is being mean. Will you marry me? My name. His plan. The ring I'd never see in a box that would never be opened, because by the time he'd finished paying off the roofers and picked the band I wanted without me telling him, I'd burned down the timeline and then blamed him for the ash. I didn't text. I didn't write back. I put the card in the back of my closet because I know myself. I will reread it when I want to punish and then forgive myself, and it's better to make that a scheduled ritual than a hobby. A month later, I saw them at the farmer's market. He was holding 2 bags like a person who has learned about carrying weight for a household. She was comparing peaches the way women in commercials compare things that promise summer. He saw me first. He squeezed her hand. She looked over and gave me a smile I can only describe as neutral kindness. I nodded. We didn't stop. I don't think I could have said anything good. I keep expecting a villain to emerge in this story. It would be simpler. Maybe it could be him. Heartless, cold, moved on too fast, or her. Homewrecker, or me. The harpy who forced a good man into the arms of someone less demanding. The truth is duller and therefore more devastating. Nobody was the villain. I was impatient and scared, and I used a weapon. He had a plan and a budget and a heart, and he stuck to them. She showed up in the absence I created and loved a man who had learned, with me, how he wanted to do commitment. The villain was how I tried to turn love into a test. If you need an ending where someone wins, it's him. He wins because he refused to propose under pressure and refused to grovel on a timeline that insulted his intentions. He wins because he stayed decent during the divide. No smear campaign, no pettiness, no ring as ransom since there wasn't one to hold over me. He wins because he waited until he was the kind of man who could say yes for the rest of his life and then said it to someone who didn't need to threaten him to hear it. He wins because his story is about building, not proving. I don't lose entirely. I learned. Under duress, in therapy, with friends who told me the truth even when I cried. How to want without issuing deadlines like invoices. I learned that comparing your story to your friends is a way to kill the one you're in. I learned that my fear of wasting time made me waste the wrong person. I learned that you'll regret this is a curse that bounces. A week ago, I deleted my proposal inspo board. I let myself keep one saved image, a photo of a kitchen table with mismatched chairs and 2 mugs, sunlight cutting across the surface in lines like music. I kept it not because I want to manifest an aesthetic life, but because I want to remember what I actually want is a life I can sit inside without performing. I started writing sentences that feel like prayers for people who don't pray. Help me tell the truth before the test. Help me ask for what I want without threat. Help me love a person, not a milestone. Sometimes, late at night, I run a mean experiment and imagine he had obeyed my deadline. I picture New Year's Eve with him on one knee and me saying yes through a veil of relief and arrogance. I imagine us planning a wedding while he works 3 jobs to pay down the loan he wasn't ready to carry, me resenting him for not being more excited, him resenting me for not being more patient. I picture us fighting in the registry aisle about price points for towels like the price points are the problem. I picture the ceremony and the kiss and then the slow suffocation of a promise made under duress. Then I turn off that movie and try, imperfectly, to bless the one we actually made instead. He didn't propose when I demanded it. I left. He met someone. He proposed when he was ready. I cried until my face hurt. And then I stood up, went to therapy, apologized to the quiet parts of me I had been shouting over, and started building a version of myself who won't use deadlines as a substitute for faith. If he reads this. He won't, but if. I hope he knows, I meant it when I said I hope he gets everything he wants. I hope the roof at his mom's house doesn't leak this year. I hope the ring never has to be resized because that feels like a metaphor. I hope he and Ava laugh about dog treats at a farmer's market for 40 more summers. I hope he keeps the index card with the monogram in a drawer and shows it to their kids as evidence that he is the kind of man who plans. I hope I never again try to be the kind of woman who needs to be proven right in order to feel loved. I told him he'd regret not proposing by my deadline. I was wrong in the only way that matters. He didn't regret, he decided. And I'm here, finally, learning how to do the same without mistaking the fear of losing time for a reason to blow it up. I am not an ultimatum anymore. I am a person with a calendar and a heart and a list of grocery items that includes the brand of yogurt someone else likes. Whoever he is, someday. Because that's what commitment feels like most days, remembering. I can do that. I can do it without a stage set for photos and a timer ticking down. And when the future asks me to wait, I will try to sit still in the waiting without demanding a ring as proof that I'm worth staying for. He's engaged. I'm the ex who waited too long in all the wrong ways. But I'm also the woman who finally learned the difference between a deadline and a vow. And who wants the vow more than she wants to win.